All right, hey people, welcome back to my stream, and I will be doing the Crying Sky ending. It's 6 a.m., so I have a couple of hours, maybe two, to try to get this out. So let's get started. Shinsen Station of the Inokashira line was one stop from Shibuya, with it taking only about a minute to arrive there by train. The station itself was situated within an underground tunnel, resulting in the only natural light being the beam seeping in from the opening at the end of the platform. Due to the earthquake, all of the lights had gone out, enveloping the area in a far thicker darkness than usual. Carrying Orihara, Orihara Kozue's body on her back, Aoi Senna set foot onto the platform. There had been no need to buy a ticket. Wait, I need to close my Discord. Give me a second. Okay, there you go. Not a single Snap member was present in the vicinity, and none of the ticket machines were in service. Only a glance was necessary to understand how horribly warped the railway tracks had become. It was no wonder that the trains had suspended operation the day before. Kozue's breathing would turn laborious at times, but she was far from conscious. Dried blood had caked on her forehead. So last time her knee got injured, now I guess her injuries on her head. During the earthquake, she had been caught in the wake of the collapsing building and had not regained consciousness since. Gigula Maniaca are unable to use their power to heal wounds. To the brain, pain is an inescapable reminder of reality. Thus, Gigula Maniaca cannot form any sort of mutual recognition to the effect of "I'm not wounded" or "the injury didn't happen." Human instinct would never allow it. Considering what Takumi does, that's how you know he had to abandon his human instinct to be able to completely regenerate, you know? Like, holy shit. Like, straight up, you would remove like more than half of his body and he would regenerate like a, I don't know, do slugs regenerate? Anyway, it's like a lizard head or arm or whatever. Anyway. Moreover, one cannot establish mutual recognition with someone who is unconscious. These reasons rendered Rena unable to assess Kozue. When they are at last reached the deserted platform, Senna lowered Kozue from her back and gently laid her against the wall. Senna's expression was stiff. With only a single glance toward Kozue, she shifted her gaze back to the station premises, glaring motionlessly at a certain point in distance. She gritted her teeth.
やった。見つけた。
At the end of her gaze, in the dark recesses of the platform, two figures stood shoulder to shoulder. Wait, why the hell is Norose here? This is interesting. One was a tall man wearing an expensive suit. His whole body exuded an aura of refinement. He had excellent posture, and a relaxed smile rested on his lips. The other was a homeless man clad in filthy rags, his hair unkempt and shaggy, and his face was covered in the stubble. The man's head was hung low, rendering his expression difficult to accurately discern. Their appearances contrasted violently. But the two men did nothing but stand silently on the dim, empty station platform. Senna felt nothing but raw hatred toward the both of them, Norose Genichi and Hatano Issei. Even though she wanted to forget about them, she would never have been able to.
母さんと妹を殺した。その二人が揃ってお出迎えか。
A long time ago, Her mother and her little sister had met their gruesome ends right before her eyes, and the people before her now were the very people who had killed them.
私の本意ではなかったんだ。
No, but I'm actually surprised he's also here. With his head still hung low, the homeless man, Hatano, let out a desolate murmur.
あの実験を止めようとした。だが、私一人では動き出した歯車は止められなかった。この男が。
Hatano took a fleeting glance at Norasa's expression. Norasa said nothing. His composed attitude remained unmoving.
この男が実験の継続を指示した。私はあの結果を望んではいなかった。悪いのはこの男。ノロセなんだ。わかってくれ。セナ。
Senna's repugnance billowed as she listened to his words of repentance.
お前は母さんと妹を見殺しにした。それが厳然とした事実だ。悔いているならどうして逃げた？
世界を守るためだ。
でたらめを。
親に逆らうのは感心しませんね。
It was the first time Norasa had spoken.
確かに君の家族が悲劇的な結末を迎えたのは私が指示した結果です。もう十分データは取れていたのでね。実に有意義な実験でした。
有意義？
Senna swiftly rebooted the D-Sordo she held in her hands, and the resulting shockwave steered her long black hair.
この男を殺せセナ。こいつが元凶だ。
言われなくても。
Senna had already kicked powerfully off the platform. Without brandishing her sword, she closed the distance, a phenomenal display of her explosive power. Her target, Norasa Genichi. She mowed him down with her D-Sordo. Even the air was torn to shreds. Norasa's head tore free and flew away from its source. Senna followed it with her eyes, when suddenly, Norasa's flying head distorted mid-flight and transformed into that of her father's. Oh man, she got rused. She just killed her dad. Stunned, she looked at the headless body that stood before her. It had been wearing a suit only a moment ago, but now it donned the clothes of the homeless man. Devoid now of any and all power, it tumbled backward lightlessly. Eyes wide as could be, Senna looked at Hatano, who had been standing just beside it. He turned to face her in return, his bearded face warped into a vicious sneer. His face contorted as if a mosaic had been affixed to it, and his body contorted in a similar fashion. Fucking Senna was so dumb. Jesus Christ. Oh my god. The very next instant, Hatano took on the face of a man Senna did not recognize. His face, his age, his face, his aura, they all differ greatly from her father's. Senna was overwhelmed with confusion. She took another unblinking look at the head she just had severed. After tracing an arc as it flew, it had splattered blood upon where it struck the concrete. It was her father's face. It was her father's head. Senna could not look away. An illusion made by a delusion. Realizing that, Senna's breathing grew shallow and ragged.
Senna-chan sa.
The man who was supposed to be her father, the man who was now completely a different person, spoke Senna's name in a far too friendly way.
君が今やったことって結局お父さんと同じっすよね。
It was the result she had longed for all throughout these past 6 months. It should have been. It should have been, and yet Senna was assailed by a fierce inner turmoil. her father, who had been reduced to just a head and his eyes trained directly on Senna.
父親の首跳ねて殺すってえぐいな。
父さん。
Jesus Christ, Senna. Still not comprehending why she was experiencing such psychological shock, Senna heard something tear deep inside her ears. I heard a voice, the scream of Senna's mind, a scream which cursed reality, a scream which emulated madness. I followed the cry all the way to Shinsen Station, but by the time I got there, it was already too late. When I set foot onto the dim platform, the faint smell of blood hung in the air. Kozuki was lying against the wall, unconscious, and there on the platform was Senna, sunk to the ground with her back facing me. Her head pointed down and her long hair was covering her face. I couldn't see her expression. Right beside her was a headless body. It then occurred to me that the round object lying a few meters away was the head that had once been attached to it. It was Hatano-san. The moment I realized that, I bit my lip hard.
こいつはラッキーっすね。
A man was standing on the tracks. Contrasting heavily with the suit he was wearing, he had a rucksack on his back. A harsh mechanical noise was emanating from it. Suwa Mamoru, a detective from the Metropolitan Police Department's Investigation Division. This wasn't the first time I'd run into him, and I knew exactly what he'd done.
もともとは目障りな畑の親子を処分しに来たんすけどね。西条くん、君が自分から火に飛び込んできてくれて感謝感激っす。君を見かけたら捕まえろってことになってるんすよ。
誰に？
内緒っす。
He smiled a flippant smile, one that was somewhat reminiscent of Detective Ban's. But there was one key difference. Detective Ban's smile had always been just an act meant to throw people off or rile them up. While it came to Suwa, however, the smile was who he truly was.
あんたは野呂瀬の居場所を知ってる？
西条くんさ。
Suwa heaved a sigh as he took his head in an exaggerated manner.
口の利き方に気をつけてほしいっすね。自分の方が年上っすよ。
With my eyes still trained on Suwa, I cautiously jumped down from the platform and onto the tracks. Senna was still motionless, so I ended up effectively shielding her back.
アンっていう人を殺したのはあんただ。
だから
刑事のくせに人を殺すなんて。
君には言われたくないっす。
I gripped my D-Sordo tightly.
あんたみたいなやつに敬語を使う義理なんてないよ。
あのさ、お前に言われたくねえって言ってるんだよ。
Even from this distance, it was clear to see the smile on Suwa's face had disappeared.
お前も人殺しだろ。違うとは言わせないぞ。お前は葉月志乃を殺した。俺は今すぐにでもお前をぶち殺したいんだよ。
Oh, wow. He didn't do this in the first ending. Nice. You would have thought he would have done the same thing in the first ending, considering they were lovers. Hazuki Shino, the nurse who had been the real Gen culprit. She and Suwa were both disciples of the Cosmic Church of the Divine Light. Was that all? I gulped audibly.
信仰の救いのためにそれは自制するが、その代わり俺が責任持って心を殺してやる。
I intended to brandish my D-Sordo, but it was obvious that I won't be able to do anything. It was just a reflex, and just as I expected, I wasn't able to do anything yet at all. Wait, really? We have a delusion here? What the fuck? I found myself in a dimly lit room. In that room was a single man talking to another much older man through a large screen.
諏訪君、君と葉月君にやってもらいたい修行があるのだ。
はい、何なりと。
Bro, what? This is what? Wow.
人を殺してもらいたい。
相手は誰ですか？
相手が何者かに意味はない。
と申しますと？
特に決まりはないと言っておこう。殺す対象、殺し方はこちらで指示する。我らが進めているプロジェクトノアを完成させるため、西条匠という少年に心理的揺さぶりをかける必要があるのだ。
揺さぶりですか？
恐怖を与えるのだ。しかしその少年の秘めた力は強大だ。直接的な行動はこちらの身に危険を及ぼしかねん。故に連続猟奇殺人事件を起こす。
たったそれだけのために殺人を？
不満かね？
シノもその修行に参加しなければなりませんか？
当然だ。これは信仰の理想郷を築くためであり、同時に君たちに信仰の救いをもたらすだろう。
そういうことであれば。
時に葉月君はお腹に君の子を授かっていたな。予定日はいつかね？
あと2ヶ月ほどです。
その子供、信仰の救いのために捧げたまえ。
Oh shit. He literally asked to sacrifice his child.
殺せとおっしゃいますか？
聖なる犠牲だよ。子を捧げれば、君と葉月君には大いなる信仰の救いがもたらされるだろ
う。大いなる信仰の救い。かしこまりました。すべて教祖様の仰せのままに。きっとシノも喜びます。信仰の救いあれ。
Bro, both of them are so mind broken that this fucking request was like, oh, is it? Well, I don't know, man. They're so fucked up that they were willing to just sacrifice their child. Suddenly, an insanely powerful wind blew against me. It pushed me backward hard, nearly knocking me over. I tried desperately to brace myself against it. However, my body didn't do what I asked. Instead, my body curled up into a ball on the spot. My body wouldn't listen to me. It moved by itself. It was like my body wasn't my own. Before I knew it, my surroundings had gone completely dark. When I looked below, I saw the nightscape spreading out before me. If I didn't know any better, I could have easily mistaken all the lights as a sky full of stars. I suddenly realized that I was standing somewhere ridiculously high. Beside me were 4 men and women I never met. No, I knew one of them. Yua. For some reason, though, she wasn't wearing her glasses. No, that wasn't Yua. It was Mia, Yua's younger twin sister, the one who should have died a month ago. Which meant this was the roof of Cornelius Tower. By the way, it's still kind of fucked up that I get their like cultists and all that, but I was like, just like that, man, just fucking like that. Man. Fucking cultists, man. Thank God they both died. Give me a second. All right, let me continue now. My body wasn't my own. I was wearing a school uniform I didn't recognize. Even the body type was brawnier than my own. And when I saw that there were 4 other people hurried, huddled together on the ground, wailing loudly as tears poured down their faces, it led me to guess what exactly was happening. This body, that my consciousness had invaded, belonged to one of the 5 victims who had died in the first New Gen case. The group died. Though no will of my own, my field of vision ever so slowly panned over toward the helipad. Shogun had filmed the video, so he should have been here somewhere. There, Shogun was wearing a dark spider helmet on his head and a black cloak draped over his body. When Shogun had cornered me at O Front, he'd been wearing something similar. But was this guy actually Shogun? No. His legs were slightly peeking out from his black cloak. He was very clearly wearing slacks. In addition, his legs were thick, like those of a healthy adult males. They weren't the skinny, pathetic legs that belonged to Shogun, to Nishido Takumi. No bones protruded from them. And when I looked closer, I realized that even his sitting height was completely different. The cloak kept them hidden, but his shoulders also looked fairly broad. At the very least, the man was in Nishido Takumi, and he wasn't carrying a video camera. Suddenly, from the darkness spreading out behind the fake Shogun, I heard footsteps, dragging footsteps, and not just one set of them. It wasn't a hallucination. Strange footsteps belonged to many, many people. There had to be several dozen unknown entities lurking in the darkness. The footsteps hadn't been in the video that had been uploaded to YouTube. Not to mention, there shouldn't have been any way for this many people to have gained access to the helipad. Then, what the hell was that sound? The 4 others beside me continued to wail and creak. Though no will of my own, my body similarly let out a cry, then began to tremble. Something was coming closer. If I was in a low-budget horror movie, those dragging footsteps would have been zombies. Zombies with both arms hanging down limply in front of them, their decaying bodies slowly swaying as they walked. But that was just in the movies. In reality, and especially in 21st century Tokyo, there was no way a horde of zombies could possibly just show up like that. But if that was the case, then what were they? My heart felt it was going to seize up in horror. I wanted to look away, but the owner of the body I invaded refused to do so. Finally, the unknown entities began to emerge from the darkness. They choked all remaining space of the helipad, sealing off our escape route. I wasn't sure if that was the right, call it anticlimactic, but the ones who appeared were perfectly normal people. They wore suits, school uniforms, parkas, and they were of different ages and sexes, but they were still all people you expect finding walking around Shibuya at night. Save for one thing. Every one of the nearly 100 people there were gripping some sort of bladed object. None of them said a word, nor even tried to. All they could be heard was their raspy nasal breaths, pulling together in the abysmal cacophony. For some reason, I couldn't see their expressions very well. It was like their faces were made of paint that had been blurred by water. Their faces were blurred and disfigured. Were their faces actually deformed, or was my sight itself the problem? I didn't know. They were sluggish, yet steadily coming toward us. They were like robots that had been programmed with a single mission. I thought that perhaps the fake Shogun was ordering them around, but that didn't seem to be the case. Every once in a while, he would move his wheelchair forward slightly, only to freeze once again and not move a single inch. 5 people had been all cornered. Now they had nowhere to run. In order to escape from the 180-meter high rooftop, they had no choice but to dive. Grasping their blades, the mob grew closer, closer and closer, little by little. Eventually, they were within the reaching distance. And yet, even in these final moments, they all stayed completely silent. As well as this. Even as they drew nearer and nearer, they didn't make any attempt to jump on any of the victims, but this strange behavior only served to make them all the more terrifying. Terrifying enough to make me think, I need to get out of here, even if it means I have to jump.
その目誰の目
I heard an unexpected voice, the voice of the real Shogun Nishijo Takumi. However, I hadn't heard it from the man wearing the dark spider helmet, but from overhead. It seemed like I hadn't been the only one to hear it. As if they rehearsed it, the five-cornered people all stood up, joined hands with one another, and looked at the night sky. Naturally, only the starry sky spread across the night. Shogun was nowhere to be found. Mind reading.
その目誰の
My field of vision slowly panned, and then I saw something strange. Even though the nightscape should have been the only thing spreading out below me, I saw a long flight of stairs stretching downward. It led right to the roof of the adjacent building, not Sign City, which was across the Metropolitan Highway, but the building nested up close to Cornelius Tower. A building nested close to Cornelius Tower. A fact that didn't make any sense because no such building existed in reality. Even so, the five people held no suspicion that the stairway was delusionary. All they thought about was how they had been saved by it. These thoughts, these emotions were conveyed distinctly to me. Then, with only them in mind, they stepped forward. Hand in hand, they had yet to let go even once. It was exactly how the group dive had ended. None of them had possessed any desire to dive. So when the staircase they had been so convinced was real disappeared, the feeling of empty air deeply shocked them. And as they fell, they screamed from the deepest step, falling. Wind pressure violently assaulted my body. The shrieks of the girl next to me emulated the howls of the most horrifying beasts. She clutched my hands so tightly, her nails dug into my flesh. The time it took for us to fall of those 180 meters felt like an eternity. The dark earth rushed toward us with an incredible speed. Our surroundings were so dark. I started to hallucinate about falling into a never-ending abyss, one that ended, and then the bodies of the five people collided with earth. With a sickening crunch, they were pulverized. The pain struck without me expecting it, a single blow that led straight to death. The impact felt like my entire body had exploded and been ground into fine powder from inside out. I felt the sensation of my heart violently contracting from the shock, and then my consciousness was severed. My eyes were forced open. A new scene burst forth in front of me. I was walking down Tamagawa Dori. My body was completely intact, yet the sensation of crashing into the ground remained distinct. Though no will of my own, I was walking down the street as if it were any other day. This body was more in shape than my own. This wasn't me. I had a terrible feeling about it. Suddenly, I noticed a strange man walking toward me. When I saw him, I was forced to acknowledge that my terrible feeling had been warranted. The man passed me. He was wearing a fairly normal suit, but on his head he had the dark spider helmet. It was all too surreal. There wasn't anyone else around. I wanted to run away as soon as possible. And yet, despite my wishes, the owner of the body my conscience had invaded looked over the shoulder at the man he had just passed. Darth Spider was right behind me. It was so close I could almost feel his breath. And then, bursting out of my blind spot, his fist flew straight to my stomach. All the strength left my body, and my vision went black. Not long after I lost consciousness, I began to feel an intense searing pain spreading throughout my abdomen. When I opened my eyes, I was in an operating room, wearing only white scrubs. Hazuki Shino was standing in front of me. Her scrubs were wide open, revealing her bloodied abdomen. Even though her face was sickly pale, she looked at me with a gentle smile. In her hand was a scalpel she slowly laid against my stomach. She applied some pressure, then a slight ripping sound. A small incision appeared on my skin. Blood splurted from the wound, dancing through the air before landing on Hazuki Shino's face, and yet despite that, the same bright smile stayed plastered on her face. I watched in horror and pain as she slowly sliced me open. I have seen this scene once before, back when I read Hazuki's memories. The man-child case. The pain in my stomach was becoming unbearable. Screaming and sobbing, I tried to escape somehow by thrashing around, but my limbs were all fastened to the bed. I was unable to move. Any movement would lead to the pain in my abdomen growing far more intense.
信仰の救いを
Jesus
あなたに。
Christ. With her hand resting upon my cleanly sliced open skin, Hazuki began poking around with the gushing wound with her fingers. That alone pierced me without enough agony to shatter my mind. I could very clearly feel the sensation of her fingers writhing around inside me. And then, just as I had seen in her memories, Hazuki forcefully widened the wound from both sides. The sensation of skin and flesh tearing. The lack of anesthesia left the pain raw and unfiltered, causing me, along with the owner of the body, to lose consciousness, only to be awoken immediately after the overwhelming pain. But Hazuki kept forcibly widening the wound all the same. The details no longer mattered to me, such as where it hurt, or where specifically on my body the pain was erupting from. I hallucinated all my near endings were being pierced with searing hot entrails. I passed out again, but I couldn't escape. The pain mercilessly forced my consciousness back awake. I let my body rip in pain. I found myself thinking that if it would release me from the suffering, I would be willing to bite my tongue off. But just as I thought that, I saw something. That in Hazuki's hand was a blood-soaked fetus, something that served only to make her smile all the more revolting. This woman was well and truly insane. She took the corpse of the fetus she had removed from her own body and then plunged it deep inside my abdomen. Her hand and the fetus she was gripping tightly in it shoved inside my organs, gouged out my flesh, and gnawed deeper and deeper into me. I began to vomit blood, but even though it threatened to suffocate me, gargling screams rose from my drowning throat without end. Perhaps due to the pain overloading my brain, my head felt strangely foggy, and yet despite that fogginess, the pain refused to get any more bearable, and I began to comprehend less and less of what was happening. Pain was all that ruled my mind. Hazuki then withdrew her hand. God damn it! I hate that shit. But the very second she finished speaking, she suddenly lost consciousness and her body collapsed to the floor. At around the same time, someone else entered the operating room. The sound of his footsteps reverberated throughout it, but I had no interest in whoever it was. The sole thing I focused was on continuing my volume screaming, unable to feel anything but agony. Seeing the unnatural expanse of my stomach, I fell into a panic. Along with the pain, I began to feel an itchiness. It was itchy, really, really itchy. I wanted to scratch it, but my hands were tied to the bed, so I couldn't. Suddenly, a shadow obstructed my view. It was Darth Spider, appearing from almost nowhere. He picked up Hazuki in his arms, exited the operating room with her, then came back alone a few moments later. He was carrying a sewing needle and some nylon thread. What was he thinking? I didn't know, until he slowly began stitching together the wound on my stomach. The pain was practically nothing, compared to the pain of having a foreign object shoved inside me, nor the agony of having my flesh ripped open. Darth Spider's sewing was incredibly sloppy. Even a grade schooler could have done better. Every time he pulled on the fishing line, it chatted against the chasm he opened in my skin. The itchiness grew even more intense. An unbearable itchiness, an itchiness that seemed to well up from deep inside me. Itchy, itchy, itchy. I wanted to scratch it. If he'd just let me, I wouldn't even mind if I died. The tingling itch combined with the pain, and yet even more than the pain, the itch threatened to drive me completely insane. Due to my mental state, it took me a while to notice that the scenery had changed once again. I felt slight relief from the pain and itchiness, but the sensation hadn't completely disappeared. Even now, as I stumbled through Shinsen, I felt an itch in the center of my body, but along with that itch, I felt the sensation of a foreign object in my abdomen, as well as the pain of the needle weaving in and out of my body. They all remain as distinct, lingering discomforts, continuing to torment my mind even now. I was on an unlit, rarely used road. As I walked down it, I saw a figure coming toward me. The road was so narrow, we would have had to turn sideways in order to even pass each other. But when I saw that figure looked at me, my body turned to ice. Yet again, it was the man dressed as Darth Spider. We passed each other. Darth Spider didn't give any kind of reaction. My heart was beating out of my chest. And then something surfaced into my mind, an incredibly compulsive urge, one that made no sense for me to feel. A crusty old fuck had been hitting on my girl. It pissed me off like you wouldn't believe. I wanted to kill him. That extremely abrupt feeling drove me forward. The face of my girl was foggy in my memories. I couldn't remember her very well, to the point where I wasn't sure if she even existed in the first place. And yet the crusty old fuck who'd been hitting on my girl was crystal clear in my mind. I've seen his face before. He was the victim of the crucifixion case. My memory launched forward, placing me in a dark, narrow alley. An alley I knew all too well, the scene of the crucifixion. And right in front of me was the victim of that case. He was the middle-aged man, and my hands were rapidly tied around his neck. His body convulsed violently. Blood bubbles froth from his mouth, and his eyes rolled into the back of his head. Upon learning what it felt like to have someone's life disappear in my hands, I went slightly cold. Eventually, the man stopped moving, and when Komeda, the perpetrator of this case, confirmed he was dead, I released my hands from his neck and let him collapse to the ground. I gave him a single parting kick to the side and simply went to leave. Immediately went to leave. I heard a voice, and when I turned around, the man who was supposed to be dead was getting up. Eyes rolled into the back of his head, and then he reached for me. With a yelp, I punched him, knocking him to the ground. But even though his movements were sluggish, he kept getting up, no matter how many times I hit him. I grabbed his neck again, just as I've done earlier, but this time with even more force. I wrung my hands tightly around his neck. I put all the strength I had into my grip, applying enough pressure to snap the bones in his neck. He soon stopped moving again. This time I put my ear up to his mouth, and once I made absolutely sure he wasn't breathing, I let him drop. I watched his body for a while. And then somehow, the man who should have been dead twitched violently and began rising back to his feet. The expression on his face was clearly fitting of a dead man's, and didn't change even slightly as he moved. Rising up from the ground, he started coming toward me. I stumbled back in fear. Startled, I looked down at my feet. A large number of cross-shaped stakes were scattered across. I had to stop him from moving anymore. I had to drive a stake into the monster that I was facing. If I didn't, I'd be screwed. Overwhelmed by the pending danger, I shoved the man against the wall before he couldn't finish getting up. I picked up the stake, and before I knew it, I was gripping a hammer in my other hand. Once again, I found myself in the operating room, but it wasn't a man-child case again. Despite knowing that, the pain from that experience, coupled with the sensation of the foreign object in my stomach, continued to torture me. It ground away at each and every nerve ending. I could see two figures in my field of vision. They both were still as could be, staring in my direction with bated breath. One of them was Darth Spider, and the other was Hazuki Shino. Her scars weren't soaked in blood this time, which was what led me to believe this was a different case than the man-child one. I was lying in the bed. A needle for an IV was embedded in my arm. However, nothing was being injected to me. The liquid in the tube was flowing back, and the liquid was blood. My blood, the blood that circulated within this body, was being sucked out through the IV. At the end of the tube, there was only an extremely dirty bucket. It was filled to the brim with blood. The blood continued to fall into the bucket. Drip, drip, drip. My head felt fuzzy. I was incredibly dizzy. I was assailed by an intense particular sensation, one where a pleasant feeling, like my consciousness, was floating far away, intermixed with the pain and itchiness left from the man-child case. Then, as if showing off to me, Darth Spider and Hazuki tenderly embraced each other like lovers. As the two supported one another, Hazuki's face couldn't have looked happier. I couldn't understand how she could make a face like that, while in the middle of creating the dried-up corpse from the vampire case. But before I could think about why I couldn't understand it, the pain grew even more intense. My throat was sapped of all moisture. My vision gradually darkened, and my consciousness slowly grew thinner and thinner until eventually it evaporated completely. I then realized this was a vicarious experience. I was being forced to experience the series of new gen murders vicariously. I was facing the pain of each case, the fear one by one. If that was true, then there was still 3 remaining. Realizing that, my despair pulled me down even deeper.
先生
Someone called out to me, and I came back to myself. I should have been in the operating room, but I was standing in the hallway of some hospital.
高階先生
Unsurprisingly, though no will of my own, my body turned around. Behind me was Hazuki Shino, accompanied by a somewhat sober expression.
折り入ってご相談があるんですが、ここだと人目につきますから、こっちに。
Her voice apologetic. Hazuki entered an examination room. My mind screamed, "Don't go," at Dr. Takashina, but unsurprisingly, my voice didn't reach him. It was currently after hours at the hospital, so no one else was in the exam room. Hazuki walked steadily toward the center of it. I, Dr. Takashina, followed her without even the slightest doubt. And then she abruptly stopped. Just as I wondered what she was doing, a man wearing something black on his head leaped out from the darkness. I reeled back, startled, only for the man to shove something akin to the piece of gauze over my mouth. And just like that, my consciousness was stolen away. An ear-piercing noise rang through my head. My skull was vibrating violently. But it wasn't just vibrating, it was being shaved to dust. I felt the sensation incredibly clearly. The sound died down. When I opened my eyes, I was in the operating room once more. Like a collection of numerous eyes, many lights bore down on me from the ceiling. They shone down on me brilliantly, illuminating my face.
頭蓋骨が外れましたよ、先生。まあ、先生の硬膜、とても綺麗だわ。
Oh man, she really is insane. In a thoroughly enchanted tone, Hazuki said those words, picked up a pair of scissors, and used them to cut away the solid member covering my brain. I felt the sensation directly and immediately following it. I was seized by a sickening, almost frustrating feeling. I, or rather Dr. Takashina, hadn't known that Hazuki has the ability to perform surgery, let alone open brain surgery. As a result of this, my mind erupted with surprise, followed by me noticing that my body was incapable of moving due to anesthesia. Hazuki wasn't alone in the operating room. The man wearing black from before, Darth Spider, was there too. But he said nothing. He simply stood in place, not moving a muscle.
人は脳死状態でも人工呼吸器なしで1週間以上生きたっていう事例があるんです。ご存知ですか？
Without losing a gentle smile on her face, Hazuki whispered something strange in my ear.
それってつまり、脳がなくてもしばらくは生きていられるっていうことですよね。先生はどれくらい生きられるかしら？
I shuddered. Unfathomable terror rose up from within me. Hazuki held a spoon in front of my eyes, only for it to leave my vision soon after.
高階先生に信仰の救いあれ。
Without warning, I felt a foreign object being forced into me, inside my head. And not inside my head in the sense that it wasn't really happening. Something that literally been forced inside my head. I felt the sensation of something entering me, then moving around. There was no pain. However, it was more than enough to fill me with disgust and terror. Hazuki shook off a piece of something onto the tray sitting beside me. Only moving my eyes as slowly, I looked over to try and see what it was. It was a beautiful pink color, but had been smashed into a pulp. It reminded me of soft salmon roe. Realizing it was my brain, my sense of dread peaked. I pleaded with her. Please stop. Hazuki's hand didn't stop moving. Instead, her expression turned to one of pure ecstasy. Her cheeks were stained with a bright scarlet as she carelessly dug through my Dr. Takashina's brain, taking more of it. Suddenly, I was having fun. I wanted to laugh. Suddenly, I labored in intense hatred. Suddenly, I felt happy. Suddenly, a fierce lust burned within me, rising up and constricting my chest. She steered my brain, steering my emotions along with it. Wait, give me a second, man. Oh shit! Yeah, that was that was an experience. Like, what the fuck, man? Oh man. Anyway, emotions different from to what I myself felt boiled up within me. Because of these emotions, my mind, heart, and soul were drifting away from the consciousness known as me, forcing me to confront the ambiguity of my own existence. As the mental rape that sought to deny my own existence tore my mind to shreds, I found myself walking under the railway overpass. If I went off the case order this time, it would be the finger food case. What? I don't remember this case. I really don't. As I'd expected it would have happened, my body was now a woman's. I was incredible. Oh, okay, I remember this now. I was incredibly hungry. Perhaps the victim had been on a diet or something. I crossed paths with the man in the dark spider costume once again. Everywhere I went, he would show up. Considering how much his appearance stood out, why hadn't the police or mass media gotten anything on him at all? Well, for starters, he was part of the police. And second, the mass media was being controlled, so, you know. It was the first time Darth Spider had said anything. He pointed at my right hand as he spoke. It was a surreal spectacle. For some reason, I was holding 5 bare chicken skewers, each one sticking out from the gaps between my fingers. Warm-looking steam rose from them, as did the juicy aroma of cooked meat. Both things further stimulated my appetite. Saliva overflowed from my mouth. Unable to wait another second, I took a bite. A sharp pain shot through my finger, but I couldn't stop chewing. I had never had such incredible, delicious chicken in my entire life. Tons of juices escaped from the meat, dripping down onto the pavement below. It was delectable. It was to die for. In the blink of an eye, I cleaned the skewers completely. Before I knew it, Darth Spider had completely disappeared. But it didn't matter much to me. I didn't even care about the strange man at all. I wanted to keep eating. My stomach cried out for more food. The fingers on my right hand throbbed with pain, but my hunger easily overrode it. Once again, I looked at my right hand, and when I realized I hadn't just been holding chicken skewers, I had also been carrying a large slab of meat. Glutinous protein was still fastened to the bone. It was dripping juices straight. When had I gotten my hands on this? How long had that question too quickly became unimportant when faced with my overwhelming hunger. I sank my teeth into the meat with all the strength I could muster. Excruciating pain. I ripped a chunk off, chewed it, tasted it, then gulped it down. The meat was tender and it carried a fair amount of fat. I bit deeper. Both my hands and the area around my mouth was greasy with fat, but I didn't care. I'd never experienced such incredible flavor before. I tore the meat off the bone. Fat melted and gushed throughout my mouth, leaving a unique aftertaste. It hurt for some reason. It hurt so bad I thought I would die, but I kept chewing. Compared to how large the bone was, there wasn't a lot of meat on it. It didn't take long for me to eat it all up. Frankly, I licked out the remaining tiny scraps of flesh that were left clinging to the bone. Every piece I set free, I suckled on, savoring the taste of meat and bone. The 5 slender bones protruding from the ends weren't too hard. If I wanted to, I could bite them off without much trouble, and not on the bones. A pierced pain ripped through me, pain so intense I nearly collapsed on the spot. Tears streaming down my eyes, I dutifully slurped out the remaining juices that were oozing out from inside the bones. I tore free one of the bones. The intense stimulus led me to crumble to the ground, rolling the bone around in my mouth as I did. When I went to swallow it, the bone got stuck in my throat, and I could no longer breathe. My legs swung around uncontrollably, kicking every which way. But before I knew it, a string had been wrapped around my ankle, stopping them in place. I could no longer move freely. Darth Spider was standing in front of me. Writhing in agony, the exposed bones of my right hand struck the ground. The impact sent violent, rippling waves of pain throughout my entire body, and I immediately pissed myself. And I would never open my eyes again. Yeah, that's kind of fucked up. I opened my eyes in the dim back alley. The scenery was a little different from before. I was walking down the alley while leaning on a DQN's shoulder. His face was horribly beaten. He looked like he was about to cry. The three of them, including me, were in an awful condition. Their clothes soaked with blood, their faces were ridiculously swollen. They all had a number of chipped teeth. The person who done this was probably me. It was the three DQNs that beat me up. And after that happened, they had their torsos torn apart and died. Once again, the man in the Darth Spider costume was there, standing at the end where we were walking.
おいてめえ、あれ、一体どういうことだ?
The guy who was lending me his shoulder shouted at the Darth Spider, but with his face as it was, any impact it could have had was pretty much halved.
あの日常とかいう野郎、なんなんだよ! あいつ、化け物みたいだったぞ!
それで返り討ちにあって逃げてきたんすか。だらしないっすね。
とりあえず金よこせよ。
金？
とぼけんなよこら。てめえが言ったんじゃねえか。西条いたぶれば謝礼するとかってよ。
One of them grabbed Darth Spider, holding him by the collar. He lifted him up, then hit his black helmet with his hand.
ふざけたもんかぶりやがって。なめてんのか。外せよこら。
He forced the helmet off. I had already predicted the face that would be under it, and of course, there he was, Suwa Mamoru, looking completely unfazed. He was Hazuki Shino's accomplice, so he was another culprit behind the new gen. Suwa rammed his knee deep into the stomach of the man grabbing him. His agile movement set him far apart from the reckless violence of the DQNs.
ま、君たち3人とも用済みなんで。
The ground shook slightly.
なんだ今の。
Behind Suwa, there was a presence, hiding in the deep darkness, deep within the narrow alley. Something was there, rumbling with an eerie growl, and from what I could tell, it was a normal size. Even though we couldn't see it, the fierce bloodlust given off by that monster made all our hearts seize up. Eventually, with footsteps that sounded like the very ground itself was rumbling, it showed itself. A literal, real-life monster. It was so unbelievably grotesque. Nothing else like it existed on this earth. Its brown, slimy skin glistened, and its gigantic head sat wedged beneath its shoulders. Its scarlet eyes shone brightly. Its mouth tore open on both sides, and its wrists were as thick as giant logs. The bipedal monster came up beside Suwa and opened its gaping maw, wide as could be. Its rows of sharp fangs glittened, reflecting the burning glare of the street lights. Its roar was like a low, dull growl, and yet it was more terrifying than anything I have ever heard. No beast could have ever hoped to compare. A roar with such ferocity, even the very souls of all who heard it would tremble.
なんだこれ。
スパークオーズが好きなんすよ。
Suwa was the only one who didn't seem bothered by the monster's appearance. On the contrary, he touched the monster's leg in blatant satisfaction, caressing it.
それに出てくるエイリアンス。
Another roar. The monster stepped one step closer to the frozen skull trio. We tried to run, but there was no escape. We screamed for help, but there was no one around for kilometers. An overwhelming difference in power. The difference in potential between our species was too great. The three of us were helpless when faced with the beast before us. For the first time in our lives, we experienced fear from the deepest depths of our hearts. When someone is frightened like that, they fall silent, shrink back, and couldn't move even a single muscle. And so the monster let out a single breath and swung its log-like arms. In an instant, as if they were mere ragdolls, the two of them were torn to shreds. Blood and viscera splattered across the alley, steam rising from the remains. The severed corpses of the two men were then viciously tossed aside, skewering them on the handles of a nearby telephone pole.
あとは君だけっすよ。
Sua's gaze pierced through me. I realized then that he was the one controlling the alien. I told myself this was a delusion, but there was no point. In the face of absolute terror and overwhelming brutality, I simply slumped to the ground and pissed myself. All I could do after that was look up in a daze at the monster, and then my torso was ripped apart. I felt this in a way no other human could ever possibly experience. And then I stopped breathing. Jesus Christ, this ending, man. I ate breakfast before this, by the way. So it's a good feeling right now. Give me a second. Let me regenerate my brain. All right, let's continue. How many times had I died vicariously? 3 times, 1 time, 7 times. 4 times, 2 times, 5 times. Human flesh tasted amazing. It hurt. No more. Darth Spider's outfit was surreal. It had to be a joke. So wait, how many times had I died? Wait, who died? Not me. I wasn't dead. The monster was seriously straight out of a horror movie. But that monster was from so what said it was from Spark Wars? So what? Human flesh tasted amazing. The bones too. Why was Dark Spider black? Hazagashina was sexy, but she was scary. She was crazy, but that was what made her sexy. Stop liking evil women. No. I'll let them destroy me. And Dark Spider was made of bones. One was human flesh. How many times had I died in this prank? Or was it a prank? No, I wasn't dead. I was dead. Dark, dead. It was surreal. No more. Terror or no bones. Don't want to die. Black, I died. So kill me. Inside the rucksack Suwa wore on his back, the port let out a strange mechanical sound. Suwa had long since grown accustomed to hearing it, and because of that sound, he has been able to murder the heart and mind of the Gigulomaniac Nishijo Takumi. He lifted out a heartfelt prayer in gratitude. No matter what, Suwa would have never let Nishijo Takumi get away with what he had done, for the boy had driven Hazuki to suicide. Hazuki was Suwa's childhood friend, whom he had lived with ever since he was born. Suwa recalled what she had told him several years ago, back when he decided to aspire to become a detective and she to be a nurse.
私、守の子供を産みたい。
Bro, it's cool. We're having this backstory right now. I love this shit. I'm not gonna lie. I love this shit. Both of their parents were disciples of the Cosmic Church of Divine Light, and God and the glorious founder had been in their lives since birth. Suwa and Hazuki had been both raised as children of the Divine Light, and their betrothal was the will of the glorious founder as well. And so the two of them dutifully obeyed the teachings of the Divine Light, going so far as to offer the life of their child within Hazuki's womb. Even when Hazuki had given her life as a martyr, she had still believed she was doing the right thing. The 7 incidents, colloquially known as the New Generation Madness, Suwa and Hazuki had caused them together. Partway through the incidents, Suwa had grown quite flustered when senior Man Yasuji pointed out all the inconsistency in the group dive video. The video Suwa had uploaded to Mewtwo had been recorded by projecting his memories. However, it had been a few days since the incident at the time of recording. His memory had grown far less clear. He had not remembered the exact details of the scenery, but since the video would not have been realistic without them, he expressly gone to Cornelius Tower to review the photos hanging in the lobby. As a result, the video had been made more realistic, but he had failed to choose the correct picture. He had no reason to suspect that something looked so strikingly different between the tower's completion and the present. However, thanks to the political influence of the glorious founder, all of that had been suppressed. It would be unwise to underestimate the power of the Cosmic Church of Divine Light's glorious founder. He had many connections within the government, and he even managed to weave several of his followers to the management positions at the Metropolitan Police. No matter how much those like Van cried out for justice, the natural conclusion to come to was that they would never be able to do a thing to harm him. Suwa's position as a detective, Hazuki's position as a nurse. The support coming from the pressure the glorious founder placed on the police and the media. The NOAA system terminals provided by Nozomi Technology. Utilizing all these tools, Suwa and Hazuki had focused solely on killing. All for the reason they had gone to such lengths to continue killing people. It had all been for the sake of breaking Nishijo Takumi. After they forced him to awaken as a Gigulomaniac, they would kidnap him and harvest his code sample. Alternatively, by breaking the delusionary Nishijo Takumi, they would lure out the real Nishijo Takumi, capture him, and harvest his code sample. As long as it was Nishijo Takumi, it made no difference if he was real or a copy. That was why Suwa had acted as Nishijo Takumi, using a wheelchair in his impersonation attempt. It had all been foretold by divine prophecy bestowed upon Suwa and Hazuki, one they would have to fulfill no matter what sacrifices they would have to make during this course. And now, after sacrificing Hazuki, he had at least been able to overcome the trials given to them by God. The face of the woman whom he had loved. The face of the woman who had loved him, and the one whom he had loved in return, rose in Suwa's mind. He grit his teeth in tender sadness, bearing the utmost grief. As he bathed in sorrow, Suwa approached Nishijo Takumi, whose mind he had just slaughtered. At the edge of the platform, Aoi Sena cradled the head of her father, whom she herself had decapitated. She had fallen to her knees long ago, and now she sat alone on top of the train tracks. Her chest dyed and deep crimson from her father's blood. She laughed. Drool slowly seeped out from her mouth. Her eyes were unfocused. She broke her mind. Suwa, now having composed himself, glanced at the girl. She's already long gone, he muttered to himself inside his head. In any case, her usefulness has expired. He felt no need to kill her. From the Gigglomaniacs who have been gathered in Tokyo for Project Noah, there were still 2 whose code sample has yet to be harvested. The number excluded Kusunoki Yua, for she had been an irregularity that had never been suspected of being a Gigglomaniacs. The remaining targets were Nishido Takumi and Orihara Kozue. It had to be the infallible guidance and the divine light that the 2 of them had fallen right into Suwa's hands, in the same location even. He had now received total proof that his action had always been proper and just. For this he held endless gratitude toward heaven and the glorious founder. Upon reaching Takumi, he dropped to his knees, grabbed the limp boy's upper arms, and attempted to forcibly pull him to his feet. But Takumi had already gone hollow. He was no longer capable of standing. Man, he gone hollow. Gotta eat some humanity, bro. Gotta break some humanity. His heart and mind have perished completely. Jesus Christ. Serves him right. With a snort, Suwa began to walk away, dragging Takumi by the arms along with him. Kozubi was shouting something. Sounded painful, like she was hurting, maybe having fun. I blinked my eye. Where's Kozubi? She was hanging from some weird cross art. Rumi was at her feet. She was lying on the ground, tied up round and round. Kozubi was weird. Her clothes were torn a lot. They were in pieces, and there was something creepy crawling. Creepy crawling? What was? Her shell, her skin, her cheeks, her neck, and her arms, and around her belly button and up her thighs, and creepy crawly, squishy wishy. Tons of thingies were swiggling under Kozubi's skin. Not 1, 10 thingies, 2, 20 thingies, maybe 30 thingies. I think they were parasites. Yucky little caterpillars. Kozubi shaky shakes. I'm having a hard time reading Kozubi's matter of speech, man. Shakes her head around. Her eyes went everywhere. Lots of drool, drips dribble. Her face looked super stupid, looked funny, and she was wearing a thingy on her head. It had lots of cords coming out of it, like a toy, like a super duper Power Rangers toy set or something.
楽しいことでもあったのですか、西條拓海。
I can't tell if this is a misspelling. If this misspelling is deliberate or like, I think it's deliberate, but it's kind of stupid to see this, man. An old guy I've never seen before. Who?
なるほど。無意識に折原梢と妄想をシンクロさせているのですか。随分と物好きですね。
So you unconsciously synchronize with Orihara Kozue's. I cannot make this out. I'm trying to make this out. You're quite a curious specimen, aren't you? Delusion, okay.
そんなに焦らずとも、彼女の次は君にたっぷりとあの拷問を受けさせてあげますよ。
Who's next? Me? I didn't want that, bro. It feels like as if I have dyslexia or something. I can't understand what the fuck the other words are. I mean, I could if I gave it some time, but I don't want to do that right now. Who's next? Me? No, I didn't want that. Who's next? Me? No, I didn't want that. I didn't want any suffering. I didn't want any pain.
タク、あなたなら止められる。今なら止められる。あなたなら。
My wrist should have been tied behind my back, but suddenly, as if it had a will of its own, the cord loosened and fell to the floor. Tied up and lying on the ground, Remy turned just her gaze to me. Her eyes pleaded with me. A gigantic device sat in the center of the dome-shaped room, giving off an eerie hum. That is Noah 2. Destroy it. Remy's eyes asked this of me. A tall, intellectual-looking man, Norose, had his back turned to me, and he was watching Kozumi's torture with an earnest look on his face. He hadn't noticed me moving. There was no one else around, not even Sua. I could do it now. I was the only one who could. But I was scared. What if Norose caught me? What if I failed? When I thought these things, my body began to tremble. There was something seriously wrong with this game, forcing the fate of the world onto someone like me. But I had to do it. That realization and resolve came to me with a surprising ease. Maybe I've grown stronger. Yeah, that was it. I was strong. I was super strong now. I stood up slowly. Norose still hadn't noticed. For the final boss, he was a total dumbass. Was it that fun watching Kozuki suffering? Raw disgust flowed through me. I grit my teeth. Come forth, Disordo. Ripples appeared in the open air, and blue light first burst forth. I grasped it. I felt it. Neither cold nor hot, neither hard nor soft. I drew it from the Dirac Sea, and a long, grand sword settled in my hand.
NANI?
He finally noticed me, but it was too late. I rebooted my D-Sordo. I sent particles flying into everyone's dead spots. I'd done it completely unconsciously. The method I've used and how it worked didn't matter to me. I just had a delusion and come to me. I gripped the hilt of my D-Sordo with both hands. Its glow transformed from blue to red.
心殺されたはず。
Norose stared at me in disbelief. He was shrinking back. I'd won. I grinned from ear to ear, raised my sword, and formed a delusion. That was the Sword of Light. It possessed incredible power to cut through the very air itself. If I called for all of its power and swung its blade, it could reduce anything on this earth to rubble.
くらえこれが
I couldn't come up with a name for it. Bro, it's okay. Right on the spot, so I just gave up on shot. Besides, this wasn't some shonen manga. That was funny. That was funny. He actually thought about that. I took the power I stored in my D-Sordo through my delusions and unleashed it all toward Noah 2. Two months later. What? There's 2 months later? Wow. This fucking ending, man. The winter sky was barely blue, but in exchange, unlike the summer sky, it was crisp, cool, and carried an almost translucent aura. It was morning. A few minutes ago, my eyes had opened to the sound of my alarm clock, and now, as I brushed my teeth, my gaze shifted up toward the sky. It had been 2 months since that insanity. Shibuya was still in the midst of its reconstruction efforts. Ever since the new year had first kicked off, little by little, Shibuya was slowly returning to its noisy, gaudy-ass self. A voice called out my name. When I turned around, I saw Remy making her way up the stairs. I hadn't seen her in school uniform since that day. Remy gave me a big smile and took a salute-like pose.
ビシおはよう。朝ごはん急いで作るね。
Remy was holding a bag from the convenience store. Inside were some eggs, milk, and white bread. Standing in front of the sink, she cheerfully started making preparations. I don't get his arrangement. Okay, there's this washing machine, dryer. I'm surprised he has a washing machine and dryer. And that's the sink? Where does he cook? That's why he was always buying convenience store stuff. Anyway. For the past 2 months, Remy had made it a point to come to my base pretty much every morning to cook me breakfast. I mean, why don't they just live together, man? At this point. Apparently, she hadn't done much cooking before she met me, so this doubled as practice for her. I wanted to tell her not to use me as her guinea pig, but just being able to eat a girl's home cooking all made me incredibly happy, so I just bit my tongue and put up with it.
今日から学校再開だね。
Fucking Japan, man. 2 months later. Ever since the earthquake, Sume Academy had been closed down, but it was finally reopening today. I plan to use this opportunity to leave behind my semi-shut-in lifestyle and starting by seriously attending school.
タクトまた学校に通えるなんて嬉しいな。
As she said that, Remy cracked open an egg. What if this is just a delusion? What if this is just a delusion? I have a bad feeling, man. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but you know. As one would expect, I actually don't know what happens to this ending, so this is my first time actually seeing this one. As one would expect, it wasn't exactly feasible to eat outside right in the middle of winter. I don't know, I just did that literally just like an hour ago. Or, oh, okay, make it 2 hours ago. I just realized it's 7:49 now. Anyway, you'd freeze your ass off. But I was eating outside in winter. Anyway, to avoid that, Remy carried inside the 2 servings of toast and scrambled eggs she made for us and set them down on a small table beside each other. And once her hands were free, the 2 of us sat down next to each other on the sofa.
じゃあ、いただきます。
いただきます。
After putting rub-a-dub-a-dub-dub. Anyway, after putting hands together, I reached for the butter sitting on the edge of the table. However, Remy had done the same thing at almost the same time, and our fingertips brushed up against each other atop the container of butter. What a wrong ass plot point. Smiling really at that in my head, my eyes soon met those of Remy's, who was sitting extremely close to me, and my heart began to pound. Remy didn't take her eyes off of me, nor did she pull back her hand. Both of us had gone rigid, staring at each other as our fingers touched. Wait. Maybe this is the thing that you know, if you watch, like, I think it was an OVA or something in Naruto, when Itachi had to kill the girl who liked him, and before he had to kill her, he used Genjutsu on her, lived a full illusionary life through Genjutsu. That was kind of fucked up, man. Maybe this was it, but for Takui. I mean, in the previous ending, he had to die, so I'm guessing it's still the same here. But Remy was doing like the full Genjutsu treatment right now. I don't know. She still didn't have a reason not to kill him at this point. Anyway.
タク。
Remy entwined her fingers with her own. Her eyes softly closed, and then she ever so slightly lifted her face. Naturally, I held Remy's hand in return. I slowly neared her lips.
朝から何イチャついてんの？
あ
Flustered, I jumped away from Remy. When I looked into my door, I saw Nanami standing there. I had no idea where she'd been shown up. All I knew was that her arms were enclosed and she had a pretty exasperated look on her face. What? Nanami? Do you want to join in? Sorry, that's a fucked up idea.
ナナちゃん、おはよう。
ナナミ、心臓に悪いことするなよ。
お兄とリミさんってほんと仲いいね。焼けちゃうな。
Do you want to join it? No, that's so fucked up. Never mind.
ねえねえ、 実際のところ
Real talk
どこ
though.
まで行ったの？どこまでって
What are you trying to say? Do you want to know? Why do you want to know?
またまたとぼけてないで教えてよリミさん。
Seemed like Nanami had selected Remy as her next target. Barging into my room, she pulled aside my computer chair and sat down in front of Remy.
キスは当然したとしてその先は？
Why is she curious about that shit? That's kind of weird. Like, I can't imagine a sister asking that kind of question. Like, what the fuck? Why do you want to know?
ちょっとからかわないでよ。いいじゃん教えて。教えない。じゃあ鬼教えてよどこまで行ったか。
Why did you want to know? Why do you want to know? It's none of your business unless you have something weird going on in your mind. I'm not telling you. Besides, we haven't even kissed yet. Why did you have to remind me? God, I'm such an idiot. I had so many chances before now. I hate myself. At this rate, it felt like I'd never lose my V card. Starting to get depressed at how much of a loser I was. I gulped down some milk.
リミさんがのんびりしてるならナナが鬼を奪っちゃうかな。
I knew it. There was something wrong with her. Not gonna lie though. Nanami's okay, but you know, considering what Takumi is. Practically a gallon of milk splurted from him. I love her shocked expression.
鬼汚な。
お前
冗談だよ。
Just a little
本気に
Joden.
されても困っちゃうってば。
That's what they all say. Phew, could we please stop trying to give me a heart attack? Side by side, the three of us walked to school together. Rumi was humming that Phantasm song again. Passing through the center of Shoto Park, we took my usual shortcut. You could still see a few traces of the earthquake around the park. For example, part of the stone wall circling the pond was still broken. Even then, though, it was still way better off than the rest of Shibuya, especially when compared to the sad state of the center of it.
おはようございます。
Yule was sitting on the bench. Turning toward us, she put on a gentle smile and bowed her head.
西条くん、昨日はとても楽しかったです。
Wait, what?
昨日？
ユアと一緒に秋葉原まで買い物に行ったんだ。
あ、わかった。お人形さんでしょう。
フィギュアと言えよ。
Yes. It's minerals. It's minerals. They're not rocks. They're minerals. Well, it was true that we'd gone to buy figures.
新しいセイラちゃん。早速部屋に飾りました。私も行きたかったな。
Maybe you could have. Maybe you could have joined them. I mean, you could have just tag along. You don't have to buy figures. You could just tag along. There's nothing wrong with that. Unless Takumi wanted some alone time with Yua.
リミってフィギュアに興味あるの？
When I asked that, Rumi gave a slightly sheepish smile.
っていうか、タクの好きなもの、私も好きになりたいし。
I'm not gonna make it, guys.
わあ、大胆発言。だったら今度一緒に買いに行きましょう。
Yeah, I mean, you could just hang out. You doesn't have to buy figures. You could just be having a good time, you know? I don't know how someone has a good time with that, but you know.
本当？ありがとうございます。
Yua and Rumi had really hit it off. Yua's and Nanami's classes were both in different buildings, so we said our goodbyes at the school entrance. As I changed into my indoor shoes, someone came up from behind me and blew into my ear. I shuddered, goosebumps springing up all over me, jumped away and spun around. There stood Ayase, wearing a narrow smile.
おはよう、たくみ。
Yeah, you know what? This is a super delusion, man. Takumi's dying right now. Takumi's real body is dying right now, and this is a delusion Remy is showing right now, or something. There's no way. This is too,
Oh.
you know.
おはよ
おはよう、あやちゃん。あやちゃん。
Ayase tilted her head when she heard Remy call her dad.
初めてよ。そんな呼び方をされたのは悪くないわ。でしょ？ファンタズムのライブがあるの。あさって。
She abruptly changed the subject. Unsurprisingly, Ayase was as hard to get the read on as ever.
よかったら来て。
う。僕に言ってるの？
匠に言ってるのよ。それとリミ。あ、本当？絶対行くね。
Phantasm had broken up a while back, but I heard they got in a sudden revival after the new year started up. I didn't know where the change of heart had come from, but what I did know was that I wanted to hear more of Ayase sing.
でも匠は渡さないわ。
I didn't really know what was up with the but Ayase reached out and softly caressed my cheek, as if she was showing Remy her voice.
じゃあね、匠。
With a bewitching smile, she climbed the stairs in front of us. In the days, I watched her go without the faintest clue of what had just happened.
たく、鼻の下伸びてる。
Oh no. Oh no, 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 man.
え？あ、
I quickly shot a hand up to my mouth.
冗談。
Just a little Jordan. When we reached the outside of our classroom,
匠さん。
Kosubi came racing down the hallway, her smile stretching from ear to ear. But before she could make it to us, she suddenly crashed into a boy coming out of the classroom and landed flat on her butt. Her eyes swimming with tears, she apologized to the boy, then finally managed to get over to us.
おはようさんさんなの。怪我はない？廊下を走っちゃダメだよ、コスピー。ほにゃ。
Kosubi started fidgeting. She then looked at me from below.
たくみさんに早く教えたかったのら。
教えるって何を？
By the way, this BGM, didn't this also play in Steins Gate? Isn't this literally in Steins Gate as well? Anyway.
ほんとね。ほら。
Kosubi pointed to the direction she had just come running from. When I looked closer, I saw Senna standing there, leaning against the wall. Her arms were crossed and she had a fairly sullen expression plastered in her face.
セナさん、退院したんだ。
Sen had been hospitalized over the past 2 months. Sua's psychological attack had put her out of commission for a long time. Senna raised her head and slowly began making her way toward us. She was just as scary as ever. She always carried a certain aura, one that gave out impression that she would suddenly slap you, even if you hadn't done anything wrong. I'd gone to visit Senna in the hospital twice a week, but no matter how many times I tried to make conversation, she never said so much as a single word. The awkwardness had been torture. Could it be that she just hated me that much? I didn't really know how to handle her. A fierce tension hung in the air between us. Then again, it would have been more accurate to say that while only I was freaked out, she was fine.
というわけで、今日は学校が終わったら退院のお祝いをしよしよ。
Kosubi was the only one showing any sort of enthusiasm. Well, I mean, a party with this kind of atmosphere would be pretty shitty.
おい、西条。
That was when Senna finally opened her mouth. I shrank back, refusing to meet her eyes.
これを。
Senna, had held out something to me. It was a small stick with the word win written on it.
ああ、ガルガリ君が当たりそうなのや。
Dedicated king. Bewildered, I accepted it. Senna quickly looked the other way.
お前に言いたいことがある。
なんでしょう。
Was it just my imagination, or had Senna's cheeks turned pink?
お前のことが好きだ。
This is the best delusion ever.
Huh?
It's over. It's over, Remy. It's over.
おぴ
Remy, it's over. Her sudden confession left not just me, but Remy and Kozubi all speechless. For a moment, I thought she was just teasing me, but Senna wasn't the type of character to make those kinds of jokes. Which meant, are you serious?
なんなの。お見舞いに来てくれて嬉しかったんだ。言わせるな、このバカが。
She had gone all Dara and went straight back to Sun mode, all on her own. Wait. Go back a little. This was all way too sudden. Way behind schedule, Remy let out a cry in surprise. Kozubi, still processing, had her eyes open wide.
なんだ先ほど異論があるのか。ありまくりだよ。そんなとにかくダメだって。
Face protecting her man from Kazusa. Oh shit! No, Kazusa always wins, by the way. That's never existed in my mind. Without any idea how the hell I was supposed to react, I gazed up at the clear sky sitting outside the window. Somehow, even though the semester had only just started, it was already quite an eventful day. I wonder, will every day will be like this from now on? Will these fun, peaceful times go on forever? I sure hope so. I wish for it from the bottom of my heart. Suddenly, I saw the reflection of my face in the window. The reflection I saw wasn't me, because it was covered in wrinkles. Cool. Color and light disappeared. Wait, what are we? That's a good. What is this? We were having fun with Remy. I was hugging my knees close to me, and a space dyed pitch black. In front of my eyes was the only light source around. It was like a monitor. It was like a window. It was like a picture frame. Inside it, Remy, Senna, Kozubi were chatting happily about something, but I couldn't hear their voices. I stared at it. My emotions were completely inactive, and maybe my heart was simply dead. Then I realized I had been watching my own delusions, a 2D world where I had escaped into, a perfect illusion. How long had it been a delusion?
最初からですよ。
That was a very strong delusion attack. I looked behind me, where Norase stood tall. But with how dark it was, I could only see his feet.
諏訪君に心を殺されたではありませんか。
So, ever since he'd done that, I've been in the delusion the entire time.
君のコードサンプルは採取できました。もう用済みですから、いつでも塵に帰ってもらって結構です。
ああ。
I felt nothing. My heart was dead after all, so I shouldn't have felt anything. And yet a single tear trickled down my cheek. In the end, I'd gone right back to being a loser. I had run away from the painful reality.
最後に幸せな夢を見られてよかったですね。
Even to the very end, I had been a completely worthless human being. I'm sorry, Remy. I apologize, but I didn't really understand why I had to anymore. I didn't feel any guilt. And so I decided to return to my delusion from earlier. Hopefully, someone would kill me one of these days. So until then, I wanted to fully immerse myself in happiness that came from the world I escaped to. Isn't the world that he's seeing is essentially what happens when Noah 2 does its job? A gaze rained down from the sky. I didn't read the previous line, but the stare pierced through the thick, pitch black rain clouds and poured down on me like rain. It's too late for him now. I whispered in my heart to the owner of the gaze. I didn't feel the chill of the rain. Instead, the droplets on my cheeks felt warm to me. It was the first time I ever thought of rain as being warm. Perhaps it was the fault of the spine-chilling cold enveloping the dome where Noah 2 was. Reflected in my eyes was a ruined city. Reflected in my eyes was despair. Reflected in my eyes was death. Reflected in my eyes was nothingness. Not a soul was here, not a soul was moving, not a soul was left alive. The only thing I could hear was the sound of rain continuing to pour. The ark had already been set into motion. We had been unable to stop it, and now the future held nothing but despair. At this rate, everything, both the living and the dead, would it be gently embraced and washed away. I heard him whisper all of this inside his heart. His heart, it's so beautiful. I walked to the figure lying limp to the rubble. It was my fault he ended up like this. If I had done better, he wouldn't have gotten involved at all. Feelings and guilt tortured me. I blamed myself. Forgive me. I'll give you peace now. How he had been born was far too sad. How he was going to die was far too sad. A heart so timid, so fragile. It was like made of glass. Glass so pure it had shattered its owner to pieces. At the very least, I didn't want him to suffer in the end. Lying on the ground, he looked up to me with vacant eyes. I pushed aside my emotions, and though I was looking at him, I tried to distance myself in an attempt to stave off my tears. If you and I were the only ones left in the world, if we stared at each other's eyes like this for all eternity, would my world be reduced to what's reflected in your eyes? Would your world be reduced to what's reflected in my eyes? The one thing reflected in my eyes was him. The only thing reflected in his eyes was me. When I thought of it that way, the world immediately seemed so much smaller. At least in the time you have left, I will become your world. Whether the world is painful, whether the world is agonizing, or whether the world is sorrowful, I'll make it so you no longer have to see it anymore. Gathering my resolve, I let out a whisper. Lowering my head, I spread my arms wide, almost as if I was preparing to take off, to soar above the rain clouds, as if I was trying to catch all the falling rain.
あなたを見つめる妄想。殺してあげる。
Feathers of light dance about. They served as gift handed down from the sky, a gift for his funeral. I slowly knelt to the ground right before his collapsed body. I'll cry if I see your eyes. I'm sorry, I can't look at them. I softly embraced his head in my arms. His body was devoid of all strength, as if he was thoroughly prepared for death.
辛いよね。ごめん。ごめんね。今、楽にしてあげるからね。
His demeanor told me that I wasn't just doing this for my own sake. He was a very peaceful smile on his face. But that smile was so sad. Even though I held it all this time, tears began to well up. I'd held them back because I didn't ever want him to see those tears. He'd finally found peace. I didn't want to worry him any further. I kissed him on the lips. They were cold, desiccated, and laden with seemingly endless sorrow. And yet, when I kissed him, his trembling ceased. I was overjoyed to know that my warmth was of use to him. If I drew back from his lips, he would see my teary face. If I drew back from his lips, I would want to kiss him again. If I drew back from his lips, I would be struck with such selfish feelings I wouldn't be able to kill him anymore. My lips still enveloping his, I sank my disordo into his chest. The sensation of it tearing through his skin, boring into his flesh, weaving through his bones, and slowly sinking through the center of his body. It passed all through the sword and into my hands. I'm so sorry. You can sleep for as long as you want to now. Goodbye. His body was enveloped by countless particles of light, and he slowly began to. I reached my hand toward the sky. Somebody, please tell me. Just where could the sky of ours have gone? Alright, that's the Crying Sky ending. And we will continue later with Nanami's route. And I think Linus is next. But yeah, we're gonna go through every route ending. And hopefully we would be able to fully finish the game on the weekend. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed watching. And I'll see you guys on the later stream for Nanami's route. I'll let this ending play off. So yeah, I'll see you guys. Ciao.